Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're really plunging into something fascinating. It challenges a pretty core belief many of us hold about what leads to success.
You mean the whole idea of innate talent?
Exactly. That some people are just born with it. We're going to kick things off with this really striking paradox, right from the life of Angela Duckworth, the author of our main source material.
Oh, it's a fantastic starting point. Really sets the stage.
So imagine this. You're growing up, and your own father tells you, like repeatedly.
You're not just once.
Right, repeatedly that you are no genius.
Yeah, that was Angela Duckworth's experience. Her dad, apparently a brilliant scientist himself, was often thinking about genius, about talent. Who had more, who had less.
Wow.
He worried a lot about how smart his family was, and by his standards, this very high bar.
Like Einstein level?
Pretty much. He felt his kids, Angela included, just didn't measure up. He was genuinely worried it would limit what they could achieve.
That's intense. Growing up hearing that from your dad, it must shape how you see yourself.
Absolutely. Creates a kind of internal narrative.
But here's where the story gets really interesting. It's almost like a twist.
A MacArthur grant.
Exactly. Years later, this same Angela Duckworth, the one told she was no genius, she receives a MacArthur Fellowship.
Which people often call the genius grant.
Right. The irony is just, well, it's huge. The person told she's not a genius ends up winning the award for being one.
It must have felt incredible, but also validating.
Totally. For her, it wasn't just a feel-good moment. It really solidified this belief she'd been developing.
A belief about what really matters.
Yeah. That maybe, just maybe, what we actually achieve in the long run depends way more on our passion and just sticking with it, perseverance, than on some talent we supposedly have or don't have.
And it's not just the grant. By that point, she already had degrees from some really demanding schools.
Right.
But what's also interesting is that back in third grade, she didn't even test high enough for the gifted program.
No way.
Yeah. And she couldn't play piano or violin, defying that sort of stereotype about certain high achievers.
So her own life story really became the foundation for her work.
It seems like it. It pushed her to scientifically investigate what actually predicts success beyond just perceived talent.
Okay, so that sets up our mission perfectly for this deep dive.
Let's unpack it.
We're going to figure out what this grit thing really is. Why does it seem to matter more than raw talent so often? Sometimes, way more.
And importantly, how can we actually use this?
Exactly. I want to get super practical.
Yeah.
How can you, listening right now, actually cultivate grit? How can you apply these ideas in your own life, whatever your goals are, wherever you're starting from?
So we'll be looking at surprising facts, stories, real lessons from top performers.
Across all sorts of fields, it should be really insightful, ready to dive in.
Let's do it. What is grit? Beyond raw talent.
So Angela Duckworth's own story feels like ground zero for her understanding of grit.
Definitely. That desire she had even as a kid to tell her dad.
Hey, Dad, maybe grit matters more than talent in the long run.
Exactly. And getting that MacArthur Award wasn't just personal validation. For her, it felt like real evidence, scientific backing for her hunch.
And this is maybe the most crucial starting point for us listening.
That grit isn't fixed.
Right. It's not like your eye color or something you're just stuck with.
No, she stresses that it's mutable. It can be grown. You can develop it.
That immediately tackles that common idea, doesn't it? That some people just have it and others don't.
Which can be so discouraging if you don't think you're one of the haves.
Yeah, it puts the power back in our hands, doesn't it? The power to change and grow.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if grit isn't just innate talent, what is it? How do we actually define it? Duckworth started by, talking to people.
Right. Leaders in different fields. Journalism, academia, medicine, law, high-achieving areas.
And she asked them a pretty simple question, right?
Yeah, basically. Who's at the very top in your field? What makes them special? What makes them stand out?
And what did she find? Was it all just about genius?
Well, interestingly, no. There were some field-specific things, for sure.
Like what?
Like maybe business leaders talked about taking financial risks. Artists talked about a drive to create. Athletes, maybe the thrill of winning.
Okay, that makes sense. Different fields, different motivations.
But underneath that, a really clear universal pattern emerged.
What was that?
Across the board, these top performers were described as constantly driven to improve. They were never satisfied.
Always pushing.
Yeah, and often they were their own harshest critic. They had this ferocious determination.
Ferocious determination. I like
Yeah.
that. And she breaks that down, right? It has two sides.
Exactly. Two vital parts working together. First, there's the resilience and hard work.
Just grinding it out, keeping going when things get tough.
Precisely. The willingness to push through challenges, setbacks, discomfort. But the second part is just as key, direction.
Meaning
They have a really deep understanding of what they actually want. A clear goal. An unparalleled interest and abiding commitment to something specific long-term.
So it's not just being stubborn. It's determination with a purpose. Directed energy.
You got it. Directed determination.
And she even developed a way to measure this, right? The grit scale.
Yes, the grit scale. It's a self-assessment that helps you see where you stand on these two components.
So what does it measure specifically?
Half the questions look at perseverance. Things like, do you overcome setbacks? Do you finish what you start? That sort of thing.
Sticking power.
Right. And the other half measures passion, but not passion in the sense of like intense excitement that fades.
Not like fireworks.
Exactly. It's about consistency over time. Do your interests change all the time? Do you lose interest quickly? Or do you stick with your goals long term?
That's a really important distinction. So the passion part is more about enduring commitment than fleeting enthusiasm.
Absolutely. There's a great metaphor from Jeffrey Gettleman, the journalist.
The Pulitzer Prize winner.
Yeah. He said passion for him wasn't like fireworks, a big flash that quickly disappears.
Puzzles out.
Right. He saw it more like a compass. Something you build, you tinker with, you calibrate over time.
And once it's set.
It reliably guides you on that long, winding road towards your goal. It's about sustained devotion to that direction, not just a momentary spark.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense than just follow your passion and hope for the best.
It's much more nuanced. It's about cultivating that enduring interest.
Now, let's talk about this overemphasis on talent. You mentioned it has real consequences.
It really does. Look at West Point, the military academy.
Super selective, right? High test scores, great grades.
Exactly. They screen heavily for aptitude. But a study there found something fascinating.
What was it?
The cadets' grit scores. They had absolutely no relationship to their aptitude scores, their SATs, or grades. None.
Wow. So high talent didn't mean high grit?
Not at all. And guess what actually predicted who would make it through that incredibly tough first summer? The Beast Barracks.
Let me guess. Grit.
Grit. Not the initial talent measures. Grit predicted who stayed and who dropped out.
That's powerful. And it lines up with what that Air Force guy, Mike Matthews, observed too.
Yeah, he saw the same thing in Air Force training. People rarely quit because they lacked ability. It was almost always because they lacked that never give up attitude.
The training just pushed them beyond their current skills.
Right, into that zone of fatigue, frustration, loneliness. And the ones who stuck it out were the ones with that commitment, that grit.
It feels like there's this subtle bias happening, though. Duckworth calls it the love naturals bias.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We say we value effort. Like surveys show Americans pick effort way more often than intelligence when asked about hiring.
Like 5 times as often, Rose.
Something like that. But experiments tell a different story. Psychologist Chia-Zhong Sei did some revealing studies.
What did she find?
With professional musicians, she presented them with 2 identical performers. One described as a natural, the other as a striver.
Same skill level, just different backstories.
Exactly. And even though the musicians said effort was more important, they consistently rated the natural as more likely to succeed, more hireable.
Wow. A hidden preference for effortlessness.
It seems so. And it wasn't just in music.
No.
She found the same thing with entrepreneurs. A striver entrepreneur needed like 4 extra years of experience and $40,000 more in startup money just to be seen as equal to a natural.
That's crazy. So we're impressed by the appearance of ease, even if we say we value the hard work.
It points to this subtle, maybe subconscious, societal preference for innate giftedness over that visible, hard-won effort.
And the danger there, the harmful message.
Is that when we focus so much on talent, we push everything else into the shadows. Grit, effort, strategy. They start to seem less important.
And that can be really demotivating, right? If you don't see yourself as a natural.
Totally. It can make people think, well, I just don't have it and give up way too soon.
This reminds me of that incredible story you mentioned earlier, Scott Barry Kaufman.
Oh, it's such a powerful illustration of exactly this.
So as a kid, he had lots of challenges. Ear infections, processing problems.
Yeah, considered a slow learner, placed in special ed, repeated 3rd grade. He even had this awful experience with an IQ test that resulted in a really low score.
So he basically grew up thinking he had this, fixed low ceiling on his potential.
Pretty much. He believed his perceived lack of talent would severely limit his whole life.
But then something changed. A turning point.
Yes, when he was 14, a special ed teacher kind of out of the blue asked him why he wasn't in more challenging classes.
In that question.
It was pivotal. Until then, Scott hadn't really questioned his label. But this teacher saw potential. It shifted the whole narrative for him.
From this is all you are to who knows what you could be.
Exactly. He started wondering, maybe for the first time, if he was something more than just a learning disabled kid, a flicker of hope.
And what did he do? He didn't just wonder, right?
No way. He went all in, pure grit. To find out what he was capable of, he signed up for basically every challenge his school offered.
Latin, math team, orchestra.
Everything. And he could grow. He wasn't hopeless.
Even when he got rejected from his first choice college program. Carnegie Mellon.
Yeah, for cognitive science, his SATs were too low. But he didn't give up. He said, I had this grit. He was determined to find another way.
So what did he do?
Auditioned for their opera program, which focused on musical aptitude, not SATs. A brilliant workaround.
Get out. That's amazing.
Then, once he was in, he took psychology electives, added it as a minor, and eventually transferred majors, graduating Phi Beta Kappa.
Unbelievable. And he didn't stop there.
Nope. Went on to get a PhD in mechanical engineering from UCLA, and now he works at the Aerospace Corporation.
He's literally a rocket scientist.
Literally.
From being told no genius and put in special ed to designing rockets.
It just powerfully shows how those perceived limits can be shattered by sheer determination.
It really makes you think about how we talk about success, doesn't it? How we praise people.
Do we focus on the supposed innate ability or the effort, the struggle, the strategy behind it?
Because focusing only on talent, it misses so much of the story, maybe the most important part.
Right. It distracts us from grit, from effort. And that's where, as Duckworth shows, so much of the real action is, too. The effort multiplier, how grit builds skill and achievement.
Okay, so if effort and grit are so crucial, how did that actually work? This brings us to those two equations Duckworth lays out.
Yeah, they're simple but really profound. They make it very clear.
Let's break them down. The first one is
talent x effort equals skill.
Okay, talent times effort equals skill. What does talent mean here?
It's not about being born amazing. Here, talent is defined as how quickly your skills improve when you put in the effort. It's like your learning rate.
I got it. So some people might pick things up faster initially. That's talent in this model.
Exactly. And the second equation,
skill x effort, achievement.
Right. So achievement is what happens when you take those skills you've built through talent and effort and you actually use them. You apply them.
Okay, so skill is potential. Achievement is putting it into action.
Pretty much. But notice the key thing.
Effort. It's in both equations.
It appears twice. That's not just a coincidence.
It suggests effort has this double impact.
Absolutely. Talent might affect how fast you build skill, but effort builds skill, and effort turns that skill into actual achievement. It's a multiplier.
So effort counts twice. It compounds its effect.
Exactly. It's the engine driving both learning and accomplishment.
That really shifts the perspective away from just relying on talent.
It really does. It highlights the immense power of sustained effort.
There's that study about swimmers, Dan Chambliss. It seems to fit perfectly here.
Oh, absolutely. He spent 6 years studying swimmers, from local clubs right up to Olympians.
And his conclusion
was that greatness is doable. It's not some magic quality. He said it's many, many individual feats, and each of them is doable.
Like building blocks.
Yeah, an accidental accretion of mundane acts. It's the result of mastering countless small, maybe even boring things consistently over time.
Sounds a bit like what Nietzsche was saying, too.
It does resonate, doesn't it? Nietzsche argued against focusing on giftedness. He saw great achievers as craftsmen.
People who focus their thinking in one direction use everything as material.
Exactly. People who have that diligent seriousness of a great workman, learning to build the parts properly before tackling the whole, taking pleasure in the small things done well.
Cherishing the process, not just the outcome.
Right. Building mastery brick by brick.
Is there a modern example of this kind of craftsman approach?
Warren Mackenzie, the master potter, is a perfect example. Even after decades, he still throws clay every single day.
Every day.
Wow. And he has that famous saying, the first 10,000 pots are difficult, and then it gets a little bit easier.
10,000 pots. That speaks volumes about consistent effort.
It's not just about shunning them out. It's about how that relentless daily effort refines his skill. His skill improves, and because he keeps applying effort, his achievement The quality and recognition of his work increases too. Skill multiplied by effort.
So what if you feel like you don't have the talent? Can sheer stamina make up for it?
The story of John Irving, the novelist, suggests it absolutely can.
Right, he wasn't exactly a star student in English.
Not at all. A C in high school English. A 475 SAT verbal score, meaning like 80% of people did better. Teachers thought he was lazy and stupid.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Not exactly a promising start for a future famous writer.
But Irving said something interesting later. I began to take my lack of talent seriously.
He didn't let it stop him.
No, he learned that to do anything really well, you have to overextend yourself. You learn that you have the capacity for that and that it doesn't come overnight.
So what was his secret? How did he overcome that perceived lack of talent?
He was very open about it. He said, rewriting is what I do best as a writer.
Rewriting.
He often spends much more time revising and polishing than he does writing the first draft. His struggle became his strength through sheer, relentless effort.
He turned a weakness into a superpower through effort. That's amazing.
It really is.
It reminds me of that Will Smith quote, too, the treadmill metaphor.
Oh, yeah, that's such a vivid image.
He basically says the only thing different about him is he's not afraid to die on a treadmill. He won't be outworked.
You might have more talent, be smarter, sexier, but if we get on the treadmill together, there's two things. You're getting off first, or I'm gonna die.
It's extreme, but it captures that absolute commitment to effort, doesn't it? That refusal to quit.
It really does. And it connects to something many of us experience, this sort of quiet quitting epidemic in daily life.
How so?
Well, think about exercise equipment. Estimates suggest maybe 40% of people who buy it end up using it less than they expected.
Or think about hobbies we start, diets we try, projects we launch with enthusiasm.
Exactly. How many get abandoned when we hit the first real bump, or when progress slows down and it gets boring?
That long plateau where it feels like you're not getting anywhere.
Right. Duckworth points out, many of us, it seems, quit what we start far too early and far too often.
So the key differentiator isn't just starting strong.
It's the consistency of effort over the long run. It's showing up day after day, getting back on that metaphorical treadmill, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it.
That consistent grind.
That's what builds skill and ultimately leads to achievement.
So this whole section really challenges that idea of just being a natural or thinking you don't have it.
Absolutely. It forces us to recognize that sustained effort, even small bits added up over time, is incredibly powerful.
The willingness to just stay on the treadmill, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
That's often what separates those who succeed from those who don't.
It's the effort multiplier in action, day in, day out. 3, growing grit from the inside out. The 4 pillars.
Okay, this is maybe the most hopeful part of the whole discussion. The idea that grit is mutable.
It's hugely empowering, isn't it? It's not fixed.
Right, just like human height has increased over generations because of better nutrition, not just genes.
Grit is the same. It's influenced by our genes, sure, but it's also profoundly shaped by our experiences. We can actually grow it.
And we see evidence of this just in how grit changes with age, right?
Yeah, the data is pretty clear. On average, older adults, say, in their late 60s and beyond, tend to be the grittiest.
And younger adults, like people in their 20s.
Tend to be the least gritty. On average, it suggests a kind of maturation story.
So as we get older, gain more life experience, learn from setbacks, figure out our philosophy, we naturally become grittier.
It seems that way. We learn to persevere as life throws challenges at us.
And often we change the most when we have to, don't we? When necessity forces our hand.
Absolutely. Necessity is the mother of adaptation. The author shared that funny but telling example about her daughter Lucy and potty training.
Right. Nothing worked until preschool started, and suddenly it was non-negotiable.
Exactly. The external requirement forced an internal shift. She learned almost immediately because she needed to participate.
And there's that similar story about the headmaster's daughter who was always late for school.
Bernie No's daughter, yeah, chronically late. But then she got a summer job at American Eagle.
And the manager had a zero-tolerance policy for lateness. First time late, you're fired.
Right. And suddenly, she started setting 2 alarms, always arrived on time, even early. The clear, real-world consequence changed the behavior instantly.
So understanding why people quit is key to understanding how to grow grit.
Definitely. People don't usually quit just because they're lazy. There are real reasons.
Like what? Boredom.
Boredom is a big one, or feeling the effort just isn't worth the reward, or the goal stops feeling important, or that feeling of, I just can't do this.
Those are the things we need to address if we want to build grit. They're like levers we can pull.
Exactly. And that leads us to the author's framework, the 4 pillars for growing grit from the inside out.
Right. These aren't things you either have or don't. They're things you can develop.
Like skills, the 4 pillars are interest, practice, purpose, and hope.
Okay, let's unpack those. Starting with pillar 1, interest. B, pillar 1. Interest, finding what captures your imagination.
We hear follow your passion all the time, right? Especially in commencement speeches.
Yeah, it's almost a cliche.
But Duckworth found that for real grit paragons, passion usually isn't this sudden lightning bolt moment. It's more of a gradual process.
Not an epiphany, but a journey.
Exactly. It usually unfolds in stages. First, there's discovery.
Just trying stuff out, playing around.
Pretty much like Rowdy Gaines trying all those different sports before swimming finally clicked, or Mark Vetri exploring music before full committing to cooking, Julia Child discovering French food through bistros, markets, then classes. You cast a wide net initially.
So you don't have to know your lifelong passion at age 5.
Not at all. Then comes the second stage, proactive development.
What does that involve?
That initial spark needs fuel. You need repeated encounters that re-trigger your interest, draw you in deeper.
Like Mike Hopkins, the astronaut, seeing several shuttle launches over years, which made him dig for more info.
Right. Or Warren McKenzie following up his ceramics class with reading, research, and then that intense internship. You have to actively feed the interest.
Keep engaging with it.
And the third crucial element is encouraging support.
Having people around who cheer you on.
Yeah, parents, teachers, coaches, friends. Their positive feedback, the information they share, creating that safe space to explore it all, helps an interest thrive and deepen. It's like tending a garden.
It reminds me of what Barry Schwartz advises against that perfectionism trap in finding a career.
Oh yeah, the idea that you have to find the one perfect interest, like finding a soulmate.
Right. He says lots of things seem uninteresting at first glance.
Until you actually start doing them. And then you discover all these hidden layers and complexities you never knew existed. You have to give things a real chance.
You can't just judge a book by its cover, essentially.
Precisely. Jane Golden, who runs the Mural Arts program, is a great example. Her work might seem repetitive from the outside after so many years.
But she sees incredible depth in it, like a painter seeing countless colors in the sky.
Exactly. She finds tremendous complexity and nuance, calls it ever-evolving and rich. Deep interest often means finding those layers over time, not needing instant perfection.
So the practical takeaway here for listeners, if you're starting out or exploring something new, allow for that playful experimentation stage. Don't force it.
Right. And if you feel stuck because you have too many interests or no single passion, remember that really digging into one might reveal a depth you didn't expect.
Give it time to blossom. Don't bail too early just because it's not instantly amazing.
Exactly. Patience and discovery is key. See Pillar 2. Practice deliberate improvement for mastery.
Okay, pillar 2, practice.
Yeah.
This connects to Anders Ericsson's work, right? The 10,000-hour rule idea.
Yeah, that famous finding that developing world-class skill often takes around 10,000 hours of practice, usually spread over about 10 years.
No, that's an average, not a magic number.
Right, it's not rigid, but it highlights the sheer scale of effort involved. Thousands of hours, years of work.
But it's not just logging hours, is it? It has to be a specific kind of practice.
Exactly, deliberate practice. That's the key.
So what does that actually look like? How is it different from just, messing around?
Well, first, it involves setting a stretch goal. You focus on a very specific, narrow aspect of your performance where you're weak. You intentionally push yourself beyond your current comfort zone.
Like Rowdy Gaines, aiming for that tiny improvement in his sprint time, 1.14 instead of 1.14, pushing the edge.
Precisely. Second, deliberate practice requires hungrily seeking feedback.
And not just positive feedback.
Especially negative feedback. You need to know what went wrong so you can fix it. Like that doctor in the VR training, he only improved when he reflected on what he doubted in his own actions, allowing him to actually use the feedback.
So you need to actively look for your mistakes and understand them.
Yes. And third, once you get that feedback, it's about repetition until mastery.
Doing it over and over.
Again and again and again, as the author puts it. Until that thing you struggled with becomes automatic, fluent, until conscious incompetence becomes unconscious competence.
Master it, then move to the next stretch goal.
Yeah, it's the cycle.
And this applies everywhere, not just sports or music.
Absolutely. Think of Benjamin Franklin meticulously improving his writing by rewriting essays, comparing, correcting, even jumbling notes to practice logic.
No gains without pains, he said.
Right. Or Peter Drucker seeing management as practices to be refined. Atul Gawande saying surgery isn't great hands, but years of practicing difficult things.
Even David Blaine, the magician. His incredible feats are down to practice, training, pushing through pain.
The common thread is that consistent, intentional, often really uncomfortable effort.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun. Deliberate practice is hard work.
It's supremely effortful, as Duckworth says. Martha Graham called it daily small deaths. Erickson found even top performers can only manage 3 to 5 hours a day because it's so draining.
So how does this fit with the idea of flow, that state of effortless immersion Csikszentmihalyi talks about? They sound like opposites.
It's a great question. Duckworth suggests they're two sides of the same coin, but for different purposes.
How so?
Deliberate practice is for preparation. It's effortful, analytical, focused on fixing errors, building skill. Flow is for performance. It's the effortless, joyous execution that comes after all that hard preparation.
So you endure the grind of deliberate practice to achieve the grace of flow later.
That seems to be the idea. Rowdy Gaines didn't enjoy the 20,000 miles of practice.
But that painful practice led to the effortless-looking 49-second Olympic win.
Exactly. Interestingly, though, those gritty spelling bee finalists, they actually rated deliberate practice as more effortful and more enjoyable than the less gritty kids.
Really? They enjoy the hard work more.
It seems they found satisfaction in the struggle itself, in working right at the edge of their abilities. They embraced the challenge.
Okay, so for listeners wanting to apply this, what are the key takeaways for deliberate practice?
First, adopt that Kaizen mindset, continuous improvement. Always look for ways to get better.
Don't just plateau.
Right. Second, break big goals down into small, specific skills to work on. Third, actively seek out feedback, especially on your mistakes. Fourth, build habits to make starting easier, like the author rereading yesterday's writing.
Make it automatic to get going.
And finally, try to change your experience of practice. Terry Laughlin's swimming method emphasizes in-the-moment self-awareness without judgment.
Like learning to walk, babies don't get embarrassed when they fall, they just get up.
Exactly. We can try to recapture that judgment-free approach to making mistakes, seeing them purely as information for improvement, not reasons for shame. That can make the whole process less daunting and more sustainable. D, Pillar 3, purpose contributing beyond yourself.
All right, Pillar 3 is purpose. This feels different from just interest or practice.
It is. Purpose adds another layer. It's the conviction that what you're doing matters to other people, not just yourself.
The intention to contribute to the well-being of others. A connection to something bigger.
Exactly. And Benjamin Bloom's research suggests this often develops later in the journey.
After the initial interest and the years of practice.
Often, yes. The early years are about interest, the middle years about practice, and the later years are when that larger purpose and meaning really clicks into place, when you see how your work benefits others.
So sometimes it happens early, right? Like that little girl, Alex Scott, with the lemonade stand.
Oh, Alex Scott is an amazing example of early, clear purpose. Starting a lemonade stand just to help other kids with cancer. That simple, powerful altruism drove incredible action.
Raising millions for research. Incredible.
But more often, it evolves. Like Jane Golden finding deeper purpose in mural arts after her illness shifted her perspective. Or Antonio, the wine guy.
Whose interest in wine deepened when he focused on how it could help people, connect people, make the world better.
Right. His purpose elevated his interest. He wakes up driven by that contribution now.
It connects to those two types of happiness the author mentions, hedonic and eudaimonic.
Yeah, hedonic is about pleasure, immediate gratification, good for survival. But eudaimonic is about meaning, purpose, serving others.
And that eudaimonic happiness, that sense of purpose, is what helps society function, fosters cooperation.
Exactly. It's a deeper drive that benefits the group.
The bricklayer analogy really nails this, doesn't it?
Amy Rosniewski's work, yeah. 3 bricklayers doing the same work.
One sees it as just a job, a necessity. The second, a career, a stepping stone.
But the third sees it as a calling, one of the most important things in my life.
And those with a calling are grittier, more satisfied, miss less work.
Right. They're more willing to sacrifice, like those zookeepers caring for sick animals on their own time, because the purpose fuels them.
What's really cool is that you don't necessarily need to change jobs to find a calling.
No, absolutely not. You can often transform your current role. Think of Joe Leader at the MTA.
Started laying tracks, just an intern having fun.
But it became a calling when he realized the tracks would last 30 years, impacting millions of people's safety and daily lives. His perspective shifted the meaning.
Or Michael Bain, the doctor who initially felt medicine wasn't his calling.
Yeah, he was interested in mindfulness. His teacher told him to stick with medicine to help more people. Later, he integrated the two.
Creating meditation classes for patients, connecting his interest to a clear purpose of helping others with their health.
He found his calling by blending his passion with service.
The author had a similar realization about her own path, using psychology to help kids thrive.
Right. After that summer teaching job, the purpose became crystal clear, even if it meant some sacrifices.
And it's not like you have to choose between doing something for yourself and doing something for others, right?
Yeah.
Adam Grant's research.
Exactly. Self-oriented motives like enjoyment and other-oriented motives, helping others, can, and often do, coexist.
Firefighters, fundraisers, the ones who enjoyed it and wanted to help were the most driven.
Same with students. Those motivated by both personal goals and helping others found school more meaningful. It's often the combination that's most powerful.
So how can listeners actively cultivate this sense of purpose?
Well, one way, suggested by David Yeager, is to consciously reflect. How does my current work contribute positively to society? Find that connection, however small.
Even in unexpected places.
Right. Amy Wozniacki suggests job crafting, tweaking your existing role, adding or shaping tasks to better align with your values and interests, like those Google employees personalizing their work.
Taking ownership of the meaning.
And Bill Damon suggests finding role models. Identify someone whose life inspires you and analyze why. It helps clarify your own values and purpose.
So look for the why that connects your work to something bigger than just yourself. That's how purpose fuels grit.
Exactly. Pillar 4, hope, the mindset of growth and optimism.
Okay, the final pillar, hope. This feels fundamental. It's about mindset.
It really is. It's about how you respond to challenges and setbacks. The author's own story from that tough neurobiology class is a great example.
Failing the first exam, but refusing to quit, saying, I can figure this out.
Yeah, that internal response. Seeking help, practicing, acing the final. That B grade became her proudest because it represented resilience, overcoming adversity through belief and effort, hope in action.
It connects directly to that classic research on learned helplessness, doesn't it? Seligman and Mayer.
Absolutely. The dogs that experienced uncontrollable shocks eventually gave up, learned helplessness.
But crucially, not all of them. About a third kept trying, persevered.
Right. The key wasn't the adversity itself, but the perception of control. Whether they believed their actions mattered, that's hope.
And this plays out in how optimists and pessimists explain bad events.
Big difference. Optimists tend to see setbacks as temporary and specific.
Like, I messed up my time management on this project, or I was distracted today.
Exactly. Fixable things. Pessimists tend towards permanent and pervasive explanations.
I always screw up, or I'm just a loser. Things that sound unchangeable.
And if you believe the cause is permanent and affects everything, giving up seems logical. Why try?
While the optimist sees it as a temporary blip they can overcome.
And the research backs this up strongly. Optimists are grittier, happier, perform better in school, work, sports. They bounce back.
Grit paragons tend to explain things optimistically, don't they? Like disappointment. No, it's something I can learn from.
That reframing is key. It's pure optimism.
This ties perfectly into Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset versus fixed mindset.
Absolutely. The growth mindset is the belief that your abilities, your intelligence, aren't fixed. They can be developed through effort, learning, strategy.
Whereas the fixed mindset says you've either got it or you don't.
Right. And if you believe you can grow, you're naturally more likely to embrace challenges, persist through difficulty, learn from mistakes, all core elements of grit.
They go hand in hand. Growth mindset fuels gritty behavior.
And we know the brain is plastic. It does change. When we struggle and learn, we literally build new neural connections. Believing in growth aligns with neuroscience.
So this is huge for practical application. How can we actively cultivate hope and a growth mindset?
First, language is critical. How we talk to ourselves and others.
Praise the effort, the learning process, not just the natural talent.
Exactly. Like those KPP schools teaching teachers to say, you're a learner, instead of you're a natural. It shifts the focus to the controllable process of improvement.
Well,
Second, modeling behavior. Maybe even more powerful than words.
actions speak louder.
Totally. Kids imitate us. If we react to mistakes with frustration or shame, we teach a fixed mindset, even unintentionally. We need to model embracing challenges and learning from failure.
Show, don't just tell.
Third, and this is really interesting from Steve Mayer's later research, you need to experience mastery during adversity.
Just hearing you can overcome isn't enough.
Apparently not for deep rewiring. You need to actually succeed while facing a real challenge. Feel that triumph of overcoming. This is crucial, especially for kids facing lots of adversity without enough experiences of mastery.
Build that belief through actual success.
Fourth, you can actively practice optimistic self-talk. Techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy can help here.
Learning to notice that negative inner voice.
And consciously replacing those permanent, pervasive explanations with temporary, specific, more objective ones. Naming the voice can even help manage it.
Like giving your inner critic a name. Okay, pessimistic Pete, I hear you, but...
Exactly. Acknowledge it. Don't let it drive the bus. And finally, learn from setbacks. Don't overreact.
Like Bill McNabb saw in Successful Executives, they stayed on a growth path, learned from failures.
His own rowing experience taught him that. Analyze setbacks, learn, don't get derailed by them, see failure as data.
That story about Kayvon, despite his incredibly tough childhood, his reaction to getting a C was pure growth mindset.
Totally. I know what I did wrong. My new mentality is I have a lot to teach them. No despair, just analysis and a commitment to keep learning, even if it's harder for him. That's hope embodied.
So it's a virtuous cycle. Growth mindset leads to optimistic explanations, which fuels perseverance, which leads to more mastery experiences, reinforcing hope.
And all the while, your brain is literally changing, adapting, growing stronger through the struggle. It's never too late to build hope.
The takeaway is clear. Challenge pessimism. Seek challenges. Frame failure as learning. Believe in your capacity to grow. That's how you build the hope that underpins grit. Outro. Wow. So we really dug deep today into grit, this powerful mix of sustained passion and just sheer perseverance.
Yeah, and we've seen how it so often outweighs raw talent, how it acts like that multiplier, building both skills and actual achievement.
Through so many compelling stories and solid research.
And the most exciting part, I think, is that grit isn't something you're just born with. It's not fixed.
Right, it's dynamic. It's learnable, something inside all of us that we can nurture.
You can learn to find and deepen your interests. You can build the discipline of deliberate practice. You can find that sense of purpose, connecting your work to others.
And maybe most crucially, you can teach yourself hope. You can adopt that growth mindset and learn to see setbacks optimistically.
As Angela Duckworth puts it, you can learn to do all these things. It's within your power.
So the big message here is that you really can grow your own grit from the inside out.
It's a liberating thought, isn't it?
Definitely. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. As you go about your week, think about a challenge you're facing. Maybe one where you felt like you lack talent or you've been tempted to quit.
And ask yourself, which specific pillar of grit could you focus on strengthening right now? Is it about reigniting interest, committing to more deliberate practice, finding a deeper purpose, or cultivating more hope in your mindset?
What's one small step you could take today to build that grit?
Because that journey towards becoming grittier, it's ongoing, right? But it promises not just more success, but maybe a more resilient, meaningful life overall.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's given you some real food for thought and practical tools to explore your own potential.
Keep diving deep.